Very much welcome to the session. I'll be asking you a question now. And the question is, how can an individual become an effective OD and leadership evangelist? How can an individual, a person, become an effective OD and leadership evangelist? You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good day to everybody. I think Dr. Adam spoke to some of those qualities that someone can be an effective ODL evangelist. But in essence, I'll say it's important. One of the facets, there are many facets to this, but one of the facets is to be a reflective leader. And I think reflective leadership is important because as leaders, we need to be evaluating the decisions, the mistakes and successes in a constructive way, because as we do that, this assists in developing actionable insight for the future. So being reflective always helps individuals to also to reduce the stress and enables them to deal better with the pressures of life. I think it was Peter Drucker who said, follow effective action with quiet reflection, and then from quiet reflection will come even more effective reflection. So reflective practice is a transformative process in the ODL facet. And then linked to this, I think it's also important for personal mastery. I think as an individual, you need to consistently improve yourself throughout the professional journey. I think it's either you're growing or you're dying. And if you're growing, you are adding value to what you're doing in an organization. And if you're dying, it means you're being ineffective and inefficient. So yeah, but added to that is that in as much as you are growing, people attend seminars, trainings, workshops, and we do further studies that we do. I think it's important that as we do those further studies, we implement what we learn. I think a lot of times we say, oh yes, a tick, I've got an MBA, tick, I've got a doctorate, but you're not implementing what you've learned. So I think sometimes we fall short in lack of implementation. So that is very important to avoid impediments in becoming effective. And I think as we build ourselves, we also need to realize that resilience leadership is also important. It's key in ODL. I think as a leader, you need to ensure that when you encounter adverse circumstances, how do you emerge stronger? Because I think as a resilient leader, you need to have the ability to sustain your energy levels, the pressure to cope under, disruptive circumstances like as we are in COVID, and how do you bounce back? I can give an example of Nelson Mandela. I think when he went to jail in 1962, he was more of violence beget violence. But after 20 years in jail and of reflection and continuous improvement of himself, he came up advocating for peace and reconciliation, which eventually at some point led him to winning a Nobel Peace Prize. But that being said, I think we need to ensure that as individuals, we need to have the requisite skills. And I think some of these have been spoken to in terms of qualities and traits to be an ODL evangelist. I think Dr. Adams spoke of, displaying high integrity and honesty. Honesty is very important. And you also need to communicate powerfully and prolifically. And then you also need to build relationships and develop others. You need to be creative and innovative, and then display a strategic perspective as you go along. Another example that I would have given is of Strive Masiwa, who's the founder of Econet Global. I think when he had challenges when he wanted to start his telecoms company in Zimbabwe, he was resilient and true to himself, and he became a businessman and the philanthropist that he is today. And I think that's an example of an ODL evangelist. So in a nutshell, that is my contribution, Tosin.